Well, welcome back to the Swap Shop, and we have special guests joining us this morning. Margaret, Jean, and Ike will be joining us, who were involved in the sit-ins in Sanford in 1964. Well, good morning to you, Margaret.
Good morning, John. Good morning, listeners. Good morning, Jean and Ike. And to our listeners, I want you to know I have in the studio my childhood friends, Isaac Ike Jr. Sellers and Marion Jean Bland. Now, Jean is just a little bit younger than Ike and I, but that's okay. We appreciate him too. But this morning, we are going to be talking about the observance of Black History Month. We are kicking it off with this. Black History Month starts tomorrow. Of course, it's the month of February, the shortest month in the year, but at least it gives us an opportunity to find out the good things that Black people have done in America since coming here many years ago. So today we're going to talk about remembering the struggle. Now, back in '64, we were teenagers who decided that we wanted a piece of the action. We heard about the sit-ins in Greensboro and all across the United States and beyond. We wanted the same thing here because there were many restaurants here in Sanford, Lee County, and many other places where we couldn't go. So now we decided that we were going to join the march. And that's exactly what we did. And Isaac Sellers was one of those marchers, and Jean Bland was one of those marchers, and I was one of those marchers. So today we're going to take it back a little bit. And I'd like for both of you to tell us why you decided to join that march. I know a lot of parents said, no, my child is not going to march. And it was a funny story because one of our friends was a college student, and at that time her mom wouldn't let her march locally, so she marched when she got to college. But her aunt got a News and Observer and saw her picture on the front page marching and brought it back to the church here. And everybody was so proud because her mother didn't want her to march, but she said, I was going to be a part of that movement. And that's exactly what she did. So why did you? And incidentally, before we get into that, Jean is a retired U.S. serviceman, and Ike is retired from the Employment Security Commission. And they are both college graduates, and they have something to tell us this morning. So again, thank you for being with us this morning. And now I want you to tell us why you decided at that young age to join the movement.
Okay, I'll start it off. And I'm going to go back a little bit and come up to that point as to why we were doing it. Well, and I'm going to go back to Rosa Parks when in 1955 and the sit-down strike on the bus. And what came from the 1955 sit-down strike was the 1957 Civil Rights Act. And we would not have the marches in 64, as it were, in 62, if it were not for what did not happen in 57. Because the Civil Rights Act was proposed in 57, but there was a man who fought all his life to make sure his daughter never had an opportunity to eat or sleep with him. But Strom Thurmond, everybody remembers, when he stood up and filibustered that 57 Civil Rights Act for over 24 hours, and therefore watered it down so that it practically meant nothing. So then we had the nice fellas in 1960 to come in Greensboro and sit down to try to give us the rights that everybody should have. And at that time, there was a Civil Rights Act of 1960, which was watered down again to be nothing. So therefore, it brings us to where we are today. What Margaret wanted us to talk about was the involvement in mainly the youth at the time to help demonstrate the rights that were so badly needed in the Black community, which would have freed the whole country, the United States. And so it was a largely in Sanford, in Lee County, and I would suppose the whole lot of the world, sort of a youth movement in a way. One thing, older people, where the jobs might be at stake, and the income, but being youth, Margaret and I had no jobs.
And
So we weren't going to lose our job. But we did have our dignity. And we did want to go and do our part as of the youth part of the movement to make sure that civil rights would be enacted. And so we here in Sanford, we did go to various places to sit down to eat, in which case we were promptly ejected and thrown into the paddy wagons at time and thrown into jail. Now, my personal experience, I was proud of what I was doing, and the realization hit me when I was thrown in jail. My mother has to see me in jail or get me out of jail. So a little bit of reality really set in then. And one of the proudest days or happiest days of my life came when we were let out of jail. My mother was there smiling, showing her approval. So our involvement at that time, it was a time that a whole lot was going on. Vietnam wars and all kind of worldwide disparity in people's freedoms and whatnot. But we were destined to get ours. I do want to interject something at this time that my younger brother, William Sellers, Dickie Sellers, said when he quoted Patrick Henry of "give me liberty or give me death," and then went on to own a whole bunch of slaves, so we know what he actually thought about liberty or death. But let me get back to the subject at hand. So in 1964, we were able to, through President Lyndon Johnson, pass the Civil Rights Act that the whole world, and Sanford included, were marching and trying to reach. Of course, the struggle was not over because in '64, where you had the right to go to a restaurant or go to a place to sleep, you couldn't vote. So the Civil Rights Act of '64 did not cure all ills. But there was a Voting Rights Act of '65. And then the Voting Rights Act of '65 came along. And then we were ostensibly able to vote at that time, even though there were still some hang-ups in some locations of the country. But even after the vote of '65, some people feel like equality for all is still not being reached, but it's come such a long way that we can all rejoice and be happy that the struggle that Margaret, Jean, and I fought for in the '60s did have a good, if not end, it did do well for the country as a whole.
Thank you, Ike. And a lot of people in Sanford and Lee County are not even aware that we had protests and demonstrations, because I've gone to speak to some of the schools and some of the churches, and they say, we never knew about that. But I do know that, Jean's mother was a nurse, and I know that during that time, she was at the old Lee County Hospital. And at that time, black nurses couldn't even treat the white patients. I don't know why, but we did not. But we learned all about that when we were studying our history. So Jean was 1 year behind us. I remember when we were in the 9th grade, when we started the demonstrations and marches here in Sanford and Lee County, we had a lot of support. And like you say, we had to do it because our parents would have lost their jobs if they had been a part of it. So Jean, what can you tell us?
I guess you might say I was a follower. I joined the NAACP along with some friends of mine in school. And I can remember we used to meet at Blandonia Church, and we had a group of people come from Raleigh or one of the colleges to come down to tell us how to demonstrate. You just don't go into a place and start demonstrating. You got to have a plan behind the action. And the plan was for us to go into a restaurant, sit down, place an order, And when the manager come over to ask us to leave, we would leave. Then we would sit down in front of the store and block the entrance.
And we would sing.
And
"We shall
sing,
not
we
be
would sing,
moved."
"We Shall Not Be Moved." And the police would come, and they told us not to assist the police in any way. So they had to carry us to the police cars. We went limp, and they carried us to the police cars and threw us in the police cars. By being young, didn't go to jail. I didn't go to jail. I went down to the police station, and my mother had to come and sign us out. But you got to stop and think, why would we demonstrate? I don't know if you remember, but in one of the stores here in Sanford, they had a black and white water fountain. The white water fountain was the cold one, and the black water fountain was the ceramic type of water fountain. And at Rose's, for us to order food in Rose's, we had to go to the end of the counter. We couldn't go to the front of the counter. We had to go to the end of the counter to get something to eat. And at the bus station, Sanford bus station, on our side, the black side, they had those hard benches, where on the white side, they had the flush seats. And this kind of reminded me, we went to, our church took a trip to the Black History Museum up in Greensboro. And I did not know at that time that the Coca-Cola machine had two sides. They had a black side and a white side. The white side on the Coca-Cola machine, Coke was 5 cents. The black side, 10 cents. So that's one reason why we demonstrated. And young folks today, they think stuff should be given to them when they really have to work, because they don't realize how the struggle came about, and they figure that everything should be given to them. And we gave them the opportunity that they can work and still have a chance. But everything still doesn't come easy. Like even when I went into the military, we had to have classes. They were called they end up being human relation classes, but they start out being race relation classes. So the demonstration and stuff was all around in every cell of society.
Okay. You know, it would take us about a month to actually get into all the things that went on, but we don't have a lot of time left. But I'd like for both of you to sort of expound or tell us today, what do you think is needed? Where do you think we're headed? And what would you tell our young people today in trying to make them understand, like Jean, everything that they have now? We shed blood, sweat, and tears to give them what they have today. They don't understand that. They've never heard of protest marches, and some of them never heard anything about Black history, because naturally it's something that wasn't taught to us. So trying to tell them now, they don't understand. So what message would you have for our young people for today, and where do you think we're headed? And we don't have but a little bit of time, but to make
I'll go first, because he take a long talk about it. I think what we need is to practice what we preach. If for those folks that go to church, if you practice what you are taught in church, to treat everyone equal, to be everyone as a child of God, that's what we need to do. But the hard part about saying that as a Christian is that people say that on Sunday, that's the most segregated hour in the world. People go into black churches, people go into white churches, but some of the new churches are popping up, open to everyone. But if you treat everyone like you wanted to be treated, then the world will be a better place for everybody.
Thank you. And that's why I'd rather see a sermon than listen to one.
I would think what I would tell a young person is how to present yourself. And I think the way your conduct is and the way you appear to others plays such an important part of your life. I would tell them to pull the pants up off their behind. I would tell them to speak the King's English or Standard English, and not Ebonics when they're going to an interview or something like that. To be well kempt at all time, and have your appearance and your best foot forward, because the way you appear to others can get you much further in life than what you actually know. An A student who has a bad disposition and appearance will never get a job over a B student who has the proper appearance and the proper conduct and the proper way to address people, especially older people. And so I would tell our youth, be aware of what you say, how you appear, and how you present yourself to others, and it will get you a longer way in life than otherwise.
And we know that very well. I guess it was when we came up and the way we were brought up.
That's right. That's right.
So I want to say thank you to these young men. They got up early this morning to come out on this dreary day, this rainy day, and they've had so much to say, some food for thought. And like I said, we can do this for a month and still not get everything told that needs to be told, but at least it's a start. And I'm sure those who are listening this morning, they're going to tell someone else, and someone else going to tell someone else. And did you know that Ike was in the protest? And did you know that Gene was in the protest? We didn't know that, so now they know it. So thank you so much for sharing with us this Black History Month.
All right.